I imagine this is something directors would always want to foster, but on this one more than any of your other projects, was there a feeling of sort of family camaraderie among the cast?
Yeah, very much a sense of family camaraderie, and it's been central to sort of everything I've tried to do, just in different ways. I've thought of things like ER and The West Wing as work families. We create these families for ourselves, and then we have our real families. Gotcha. And so it was the thing that attracted me about doing the American version of Shameless, and also about doing this film. I think we live in these social systems, these family systems, that really shape a lot of how we live our lives. We like to pretend we're not part of that family or that we've grown past that family. But you go home for a holiday or for a meal or for a family event, like what happens in this film, and suddenly you find yourself, you're a teenager again in your house, even if you're an adult and think you've become somebody completely different. Your family still treats you as if you're at some previous age and you've got a specific responsibility in your family. You're the one that makes people laugh. You're the one who's a problem. You're the one who's, whatever that is. So I'm very attracted to any stories that explore that.
Gotcha. I mean, was that chemistry immediate between sort of Juliette and Meryl and everyone?
No, the chemistry was hard won. There was a lot of work that went into it. Tracy Letts and I, who wrote the play and the screenplay, spent a lot of time sort of creating the backstory so that everybody knew what had happened between the sisters. We had what happened to them at 12 and 14 and what sports they'd played and everything. We talked about all those things. We rehearsed it. Then we talked about, what the relationships were between the in-laws and what that history had been. And then they spent a tremendous amount of time just together trying to learn literally the physical things that are similar between them. And it's very subtle in the film, but you'll notice that Meryl and Julia smile the same way and kind of have the same way of attacking when they go, same body movements. And those are all those things that we learn from our parents and in our environment. They're not biological, they're all learned behavior. So there was a lot of time that went into actually trying to make them feel like that family.
Well, that actually sort of leads nicely into my next question, because it sounds like you walked away with a great understanding of the story of the characters just simply by making this film.
Yeah, I think that's true. One of the things you're trying to do, and it's one of the great pleasures of working on good material, is you kind of find yourself immersing yourself in the process, and we all did. And we actually bought this house in Osage County where the piece was set. It ended up being a lot less expensive to simply buy the house and shoot in it than it would be to build a set. And it was out in the country, and so it took about 45 minutes from where we were staying to get there, and so you felt every day as if you were driving back to your family home for that family meal and weren't sure how you were going to feel about it, and get out of the car and walk into the house. And we started to have an understanding of who they were, who the people were. And it's one of the kind of the great joys of being able to do it, is you fall into a world that you haven't been in before, and with a group of people that you come to admire, both as the cast, but oddly enough also as the characters. You sort of feel like you know them both. You know Meryl and you know Violet, and you know Julia and you know Barb.
Gotcha. I mean, what were some of the challenges in adapting this stage play into sort of giving it the cinematic treatment?
Well, Tracy Letts and I, the screenwriter and playwright, spent about 18 months working on it. Because in the theater, it's about the words. You're using the words to describe the surrounding area, the heat, the feeling of the place, the rhythm of it. And in the cinema, you're trying to do that visually. You're trying to use a visual shorthand to tell you a lot of things that the characters speak on stage. So a lot of the conversation in the adaptation was, are we going to see this already? Are we going to know it already? Are we going to be... And the other big difference is that you're very close to the actors in the film. You're seeing them up close. You're getting a lot more nuance. You're simply closer to them. You're not 50 or 100 feet away in a theater, in a stage experience. So we were always trying to ask the question of, will I already know this? Will I already understand it? And so we, it was a little over 3 hours in the theater. And it's about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours in the film. And that condensing is all about, what we see and what we can tell from how they look at each other, the subtext that you get in film that you don't get on stage.
You mentioned that it's the 3 hours, and then you cut it down to 2 hours. Is there any particular scenes which you were sort of would have loved to put in but didn't fit sort of time constraints?
There's the great challenge of it always is having scenes that you love and that every time you're watching the film and testing with an audience, you're realizing increasingly aren't necessary. There's a wonderful scene, beautifully written scene and beautifully performed scene that was in the film, which is an early argument between Barb and between Ewan and Julia, between Barb and Bill, that I fought and fought and fought to leave in the film. And George and Harvey and a number of other people keep saying to me, "You don't need that scene. You really don't need that scene." I said, "No, I have to have that scene." And then I said, finally, for one of the tests, I said, "All right, I'll take it out. And we'll just try it. But it won't work." And then we took it out, and it worked beautifully. Because it actually was telling you something that you learned later, and it was more as well done as the scene was, because I thought it was beautifully performed by the actors. It was more... it was a better experience for the audience to not know, just hear intimations and then get the information later.
I wanted to ask, I'm sure you agree, the dinner scene is one of the most memorable scenes in the film, and incredibly acted. What's the immediate aftermath of a scene like that like? After, very intense, Meryl Streep is spouting vitriol everywhere, you hit cut. What's the immediate aftermath?
Almost every time you hit cut in those big emotional scenes, that you immediately hear laughter.
Oh, okay.
There's a need to release the tension of the scene, and there's almost always something ridiculous that's happened that that you don't know about. In our case, we had all this food out on the table. We're in Oklahoma in a real location. It was hot, and so a lot of flies showed up. So a lot of the laughter was about something landing on somebody's face off screen in the shot. And I'm in the kitchen, on the monitor, so I can't really see. And then I would hear, I'd call cut, and I'd hear uproarious laughter because something had happened that I didn't know about. But I think that's just natural sort of human behavior where, when there's tension, you're always looking for ways to break that or to, to laugh about it, find some way to undercut it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Very nice to talk to you.